Thank you so much for joining us today. So if it's okay, I'm going to do a quick intro. Lanre is CEO and co-founder at IdentityPass. He is IdentityPass is a KYC compliance company backed by over 3.3 million in equity funding, which is pretty impressive. And you've gone through the #1 tech startup acceleration program through the Y Combinator, which is really impressive. He was once COO of a property tech company, MyPaddy, and an IT officer for Enactors in Nigeria. He was once a team leader of a student-led organization called Enactors AAUA, where he led hundreds of students to execute community-led projects. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Education in Computer Science and Education, and he's gone ahead to complete a postgrad diploma at the London School of International Business, majoring in Strategic Management. Lanre is also an MBA student at, gosh, you're studying a lot here, which is really impressive. Is also an MBA student at Johns Hopkins University, which is incredible, specializing in analytics, leadership, and innovation. Lanre, it's just, you've got such a great background, lots of academic experience. And if I've missed anything, please feel free to fill in for me.
Thank you so much, Rosie. So hi everyone, nice to be here. I'll probably just, I think I can share my screen very briefly. Please do confirm if you can see it right now. Yeah. Okay, great. So again, my name is Lanre, and Rosie already did a great job in terms of the background, so probably I won't just go there. Today, I'm the co-founder and CEO of IdentityPass. And what we do basically is to help millions of Africans to not just only be verified when they need to access a couple of services, either banking services, or they want to get credit, or mobility, or e-commerce services, whichever one, right? HR, background checks. But as well, we kind of open the door for many people in this part of the world to access so many global services, right? And I'm just going to go through few points around, because I have like a few minutes, few points around what I'm meant to discuss about. So I'm really talking about harnessing the power of technology and digital identity for governance in developing countries. Again, pointers on developing countries. And this is because today we operate in this space, right? And probably we can talk on that. But before I move on, let me see if I can, great. So again, this is what we are. And today we serve a couple of countries, a couple of players in Africa. Majorly we're in Nigeria, but we have so many companies that we serve in Kenya, Rwanda, South Africa. Today we can easily verify over 30, people from like 30 different countries in Africa. And globally, we today can verify over 6,000 government IDs. And also internally, we have 3 different types of products. We have data verification, which is we connected directly to government database. We know digital IDs of individuals, and we just help them when businesses need to do like KYC on them, we kind of like confirm that yes, they actually who they say they are. The second one is the biometrics, where we've kind of understudied what the biometric landscape looks like in the region, and compared to the West, where, for instance, they probably do not have things like facial marks on their faces. In Africa, and for those that probably know Africa, you probably would have met 1 or 2 persons that have like facial marks. Yeah. Sometimes some biometrics technology that are not homegrown have not placed this thing into context, and that's part of the things that we've done. And the third thing is document verification, which allows us to recognize any government approved documents in the region. But let me go really into some of the realities we have right in the region. Globally, there are over 1 billion people that do not have any form of ID. You can't even recognize them. They can't be traced, right? It's 1% of that number stays here in sub-Saharan Africa. The effect of that number, in case we do not know, the effect of that number is that you don't know what people, you don't know who they are, you don't know where they are, And so when you want to do community services or you want to empower them either from the government level or from even the private level, it's very difficult because you're going into a region, you don't know the number of people that stays there, you don't know what they do, you don't know the kind of job that they are, you don't know their economic strengths. And so it's quite difficult for you to map so many any social plan to help them. And that's a big challenge that we currently face in the region, where we have a lot of people that cannot even be identified. We have a lot of people that do not even have like birth certificates or even the digital form, right? And so you don't know where they were giving birth to, you don't know what kind of health plan they should be on. You don't know if they should be on a health plan. And so when you ask them, hey, what do you think your age is? Some people probably just guess because of their skin, well, I think I look like I'm in my 50s, or kind of trace when somebody in their family died, and it's kind of messy. That's a big chunk of reality we have in the region today. Now, going deeply into what digital identity means, again, a bit of context for those probably that sometimes mix this up with paper identity. So we have the paper identity, which is the manual one, the handwritten one, and we have countries like Ethiopia, for instance, that have like handwritten IDs. Digital identity, again, needs to meet minimum these 4 major criteria, right? There are other criteria that are defined, but these are like the 4 major ones that needs to be met. The first one is it needs to be of high standard, right? That the standard is being laid by the government or it's being laid by private sector, whoever, but it needs to be of high standard. Second is that it needs to be unique. So you need to be able to tie one person to a particular ID, and you also know the attributes of that person because you've been able to tie that ID to that person. And so you can create like unique programs. You can now create like so many services and products for that person because now you can identify who they are. The third thing also is the fact that the individual still remains the owner of the data, right? So you need to get consent from the person to be able to issue a digital ID or to be able to manage a digital ID for the person, right? And on that particular context, in developing countries today, especially most countries in Africa, there are a couple of cultural things that kind of like hits against that. I'm from a culture called Yoruba in Nigeria, and in my deep culture, we have something that says it's a taboo to count the children of a person for him or her. So usually, so when I was young, when there was this census that was conducted because in where I used to live when I was very young. And a couple of people had issues allowing the census folks, the national population folks, to actually count the number of children that they have. Because according to them, it's a taboo. You can't count my children, right? I will tell you the number of children that I have, but you can't just count for me, right? And that's a reality. We still have so many, very few taboo system or very few cultural things that kind of negates this digital identity movements. And the fourth one is that the person that owns the ID needs to be able to control the ID, needs to be able to have the permission to withdraw the IDs when they want to withdraw or modify it or allow other people to access it. These are the 4 major criteria that a digital ID needs to have. Again, other institutions have different other additions, right? But these are the 4 things that we work with here. Now, bringing this back again to more context, I think this was something that was done by McKinsey, a report that was done by McKinsey, and bringing back the huge number of people that do not have digital IDs. Again, you can see the number of people we have globally in the world. And this just literally broke it down to how massive this challenge is. And even though we have some of the people in the developed world already solved this, literally they can trace people in even the US, you have your SSN, that kind of ties to so many things. In the developing world, that is still missing, right? And that needs to be solved. So it needs to be solved using enrollment, it needs to be solved using authentication and verification, and that's we are in the verification side of things, right? So you have a huge number of people, again, that do not have these things. Now, what happens, and I'm going to, because I have a very limited time, what happens when this is rightly done in developing world, right? What happens when everybody has digital ID, or at least a good number of people have digital IDs? I think I have some examples from very few, just two countries that shows what can happen when things are done rightly. And we saw, so for instance, Chile, I think this happened in during the COVID season because they were able to, because again, they were able to, they have a lot of people in the country enrolled in the digital ID system. They were able to roll out so many millions of social programs. They're part of one of the few countries in the world that have sustainably rolled out so many social programs based on digital ID and sustain it, right? We've also seen an example in India where over 200 million people, women specifically, were able to have access to financial inclusion program. Again, because digital ID was greatly done in India. Again, these are examples that developing countries can easily adopt. There's no way, so we can't keep talking about financial inclusion. We can't keep talking about ensuring that every single gender have access to equal opportunities, but we can't even identify them. We don't even know who they are, where they are, right? We can't build social programs in developing countries when we do not invest in digital IDs, or when people do not pay some level of cognizance into things like this. And just bringing back to what we do, right? Personally, as an Pass, what we do today is, and I'm not talking high level of things we do. I'm just beginning to just one major thing I think is more important to this conference is the fact that because we exist, because we are in existence, so many people in the region can now afford or access a couple of products and services. And in the course of this program, I can take some questions around how we're doing that. Today, we've seen more women now being able to get credits because we cannot do their KYC for a credit provider that actually wants to give them credits. These are things that they did not allow before. If you are in Nigeria, for instance, today, you know that you may not be able to request payment using PayPal. And that's just one example. There's so many apps that are blocked from people that live in Africa, different part of African region, because they can't just verify them. It's not the fault of these businesses, right? Now we are opening it up. We are working with so many companies in India, in the US, and UK. And so naturally, people in Africa, in the developing world, can now access global products and services from music streaming to financial services and all that. And we hope to double down on these efforts. Thank you so much. Probably don't take much of your time. If you have questions, I guess we'll take it at the panel session.
Thank you so much, Lanre. I actually was just about to I was just writing a question down that I had, which I'm happy to sort of pose at the end, but just seeing as you've just touched upon it, it's quite interesting what you've mentioned about financial inclusion. We can't just keep speaking about it. We actually need to act upon it as well, because of what that actually, the doors and the actual social good that can actually allow for. You know, financial inclusion is not just giving somebody a bank account, it's giving them a means to
Yes.
a new world, a new life. And it's opening doors from them professionally, from a lifestyle point of view, socially. It's giving them such an independence and a confidence in that could, you know, launch them beyond what they think they currently can and are capable of doing, because that's what they're limited to, unfortunately. And I think what I for sure wanted to speak to you about, and we can touch upon later, unless you want to mention now, is there's always a really significant role that governments have here. So, for example, you've touched upon PayPal, and PayPal is very, you know, often there will be a lot of political reasons behind why there is access and there isn't access. So sometimes the financial inclusion is out of the hands of incredible startups and organizations such as yourselves. So what are you doing to navigate those barriers with governments?
So what we do today, and thanks for that question, great one. What we do today is to try to see how we can work with so many government agencies in terms of, number one, policy formation. There's so many countries in Africa today that do not even have data laws, right? Like real established data laws like you have in the GDPR. I mean, Nigeria probably has one, NDPR underneath that. But you have so many African countries that do not even have one that is really recognized, that kind of protect, that recognizes digital ID and also protect the citizens for this. And so usually one of the things we do today is to work with government agencies from different parts of Africa to see how we can also help them with policy formation, again, on digital IDs, on the use of it, on the management of it, on the administration, authentication, and verification set of digital identity. We've also worked with, we're also working very close with OCR. OCR is like an organization that kind of have representatives of so many African countries, agencies in them. Most African countries are kind of represented there. And we're also working very closely to them to see how we can do. We invest a little bit in research. And even just recently, we just launched a couple of research on our blog, or some of the research that we do in African context to see the kind of challenge we have and how we're solving it. And we also recommend things that needs to be done. And so many times as well, we work again very closely to kind of just advise some of the government representatives on things that needs to be done. So for instance, for me personally, I'm a member of, NASBA. NASBA is the business committee for National Assembly in Nigeria, where when laws, ease of doing business laws needs to be placed, they kind of go through NASBA, we kind of recommend some of the things that needs to be done. And I sit on the e-business side of things. And so usually most times, I always try to recommend some of the policies that needs to be changed from this perspective. So the little things we can do, we can only keep working with them, we can only keep recommending, we can only keep negotiating, we can only keep lobbying on things that needs to be done the right way. But governments globally are always very pain to the ass to work with.
Yeah, no, I completely appreciate it. And you made a comment, which I'm going to come back at, which is the little things that we can do. Well, it's the little things that you are doing that are actually opening so many doors. And it's the reason why we're here today and the reason why we've asked you to be here today. It may seem little, but for somebody that you can actually make such a big change to, it's big. So congratulations on what you are doing and the success that you are having, and I genuinely hope that more success will come from that. Please stick around. We will have a Q&A panel later on where I think we will maybe deep dive a little bit more into some of the comments that you've made. To our audience as well, please, Q&A box at the bottom, send your questions, don't be shy. Any feedback that you have, we would love to have in the chat box. And with some of the questions, if they're specific to a speaker, please do write their name. I can say that we've already got a question there. And by all means, to our speakers, if you want to answer some of these questions direct in the box, you are welcome to do so. Otherwise, we will try and address them later on.